Hello, this is Doris Kearns Goodwin, and this is History in 5, and I'm going to tell you about Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, and the Progressive Era. Before the Progressive Era, we had this huge gap between the rich and the poor, women working in factories, maximum hours not even cared about, no workman's compensation, and nothing was being done about it. And then suddenly comes a movement from the society, led in part by Theodore Roosevelt, helped by these muckraking journalists, to decide that government has to have a role in dealing with the social and economic problems of the age. So as a result, it was a really optimistic, heady time. It was, as a later Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, later said, one of those generations that had a rendezvous with destiny. That's what it felt like. If I could have lived in one of those times, I'd be back in that Progressive era. The most important part, I think, of Teddy Roosevelt's leadership was his ability to communicate with his countrymen. He knew how to speak in a language that they understood. He sometimes said that sometimes my Harvard people might think I'm a little folksy in my language and that I'm not sophisticated enough, but I know how to reach the emotions of the people. And he took these huge train trips around the country for months at a time, where he would stop at every village station and talk to the people, repeating his mission over and over again. And then most importantly, he had the most remarkable set of relationships with the press. He's the one who defined the bully pulpit, meaning the national platform the president has to mobilize public sentiment and to bring to bear pressure from the outside to force a reluctant Congress to do what it may not want to do. Even when he was having his shaving hour at the White House, he would allow the press to come in and they could ask questions while the barber was trying to shave him. Among the people in the press, none were more important to the Progressive Era than a group at a magazine called McClures, founded by Sam McClure, this fabulous, manic-depressive, really interesting character, who gave his staff, including Ida Tarbell, Ray Baker, William Allen White, and Lincoln Steffan, legendary names in the history of journalism, sometimes 2 years to research their projects so that they could come up with stories that could mobilize public sentiment. Ida Tarbell writing about Standard Oil. So stunning were her revelations of the unfair uses that Standard Oil had made in order to become a monopoly that it led to the antitrust suit against Standard Oil. And Lincoln Steffan's writing about the corruption in the city led to the toppling of a lot of old bosses, people sent to jail, and reform mayors coming in. And together they formed a camaraderie that was unlike any they had ever had before. And they looked back on this time years later, 2 decades, 3 decades later, as the most fulfilling time of their lives because they felt they had a mission and a call to change America, and they did. History has known so very little about Taft, mostly only that he followed Teddy Roosevelt and was president, and then Teddy came back from Africa, ran against him, and that they had a very ugly campaign against one another. But the story is much more complex and I think more interesting. They'd had a long friendship, 400 letters written over time, over 2 decades. Taft was handpicked by Teddy Roosevelt to be his successor. Teddy actually ran his campaign, telling him, fight, do this, be more like me. But then he felt that Taft had disappointed him in not being as progressive as he was supposed to be, and he decided then to run against him in 1912. The issues that were part of the industrial era led to a rift in the Republican Party, a split between the progressive wing and the more established conservative wing that again, once again, history comes full round. We're seeing a split in the Republican Party now that is being called a civil war, which actually was taking place in 1912. And I suppose the cautionary tale for the current Republican Party is when that split took place, before it took place, Roosevelt was able to contain both wings and get a lot done, win an election, keep the Republicans in majority. Once the split widened and he formed the third party, the Bull Moose Party, then both he and Taft and both wings of the Republican Party lost that election, lost the Congress, lost the Senate. So it should tell the current Republican Party that it's sometimes healthy to have dissent within your party, but when it ruptures to the point where you're yelling at one another and really threatening to leave, then history suggests that it's a tough time for that party.